Thank God it is Friday. Good morning. This is Mervin Hanley at THG Network, and welcome. It's a pleasure to be in your company this morning. It's Friday, 16th August. What we do on a Friday, or what we try to do on a Friday, instead of presenting the news, we'll have special commentary or we'll have interviews. And so this morning, I will be speaking with Dr. Kelvin Daly out of the island of Nevis. Lots happening on the island politically and as far as governance is concerned. So I will take some time this morning to speak with Dr. Daly. In the meantime, and while you're listening to this interview, I ask that you subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss other interviews, future interviews that we'll present to you on a Friday. And of course, Monday to Thursday, we have THG News Today. So without any further ado, we will now speak to Dr. Kelvin Daly. Again, let me say good morning to you, Dr. Daly, and welcome to THG. It's been a minute, so it's great to have you. So much to talk about.
Well, it's good to be back, Marvin. It's always a pleasure speaking to you and sharing information here from St. Kitts and Nevis.
Dr. Daly, so much to talk about this morning. Before we get into the meat of our conversation, I want you to give viewers and listeners a peek into the life of Dr. Daly as far as your career path and all that good stuff. And I ask you that not just to give the audience a peek, but also because now that you are a political commentator, you'll hear your critics. I hear them. I see them when they post and make their comments. They say Dr. Daly is bitter, Dr. Daly is jobless, Dr. Daly is crazy, and the list goes on. So for those who do not know any better, or they heard about you from the critics and form their own opinions by what they say, I just wanted to share with folks that in Dr. Daly, and the mere fact that you have attained the title of doctor should say enough. But in a nutshell, Dr. Daly, you are an accomplished person. But just to give the viewers an audience of those who may not know, who is Dr. Daly?
Well, I'm from Nevis, obviously. I would have immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 16. Went to high school there for a year, went on to college. I hold 3 degrees. One, first, my undergraduate degrees in biology, and then my master's in PhD in animal science, animal veterinary science to be exact. I would have returned home in 1991 and started a business, a poultry operation over there in the river. Unfortunately for us, the storms and hurricanes of 95 and then in 98 put an end to that dream. But before that, we were doing quite well in producing tons of poultry for the local market on St. Kitts and on Nevis. I then proceeded into teaching Charleston Secondary. I taught science, mostly biology, and of course I taught also with feelings for integrated science. And at the time, it was also a course called General Paper for Cambridge. So I taught those courses. And I'm glad to say that many of my students still remember all the lessons we heard. I then would have gone into agriculture when NRP went into power in 2006. Minister Roberta Hector, asked me to be the director of agriculture, and I accepted. So I moved from CSS and teaching. Excuse me?
No, I said, oh,
yes. Yes, at CSS, I was always a deputy principal, so I had a lot of responsibility in addition to teaching. So I would have gone into agriculture in 2006. And in 2008, with the retirement of Mr. Wilkin, I became the permanent secretary, and so I stayed there until the government demoted office in 2013, at which point I was asked to basically leave, go on leave and never to return. So I then applied and was accepted to be the president of the Clarence Fisher College on St. Kitts. I worked there for 3 years, from 2013 to 2016. And again, politics reared its ugly head and I was forced out prematurely. So my ascent into politics was accidental. I was going to use that word. I was never really political. I always had an opinion of things, but I never really shared it on a political platform.
Right.
And so after all these instances where I felt I was under the gun, so to speak, from the political party CCM, I decided, to stand up for myself and stand up for those persons who were in similar situation but who were afraid to speak and defend themselves in public. Yes. And so I became an advocate for NRP, an activist, and then in 2020 I was asked to contest for the federal seat, Nevis 9, against the sitting premier of Nevis. You recall that was during the COVID, so things were very, very difficult. To campaign and reach out to people at the time. The curfews really hit us hard with that. But it was a wonderful experience because then I got to speak to people in your homes, speak to people on the street and see exactly what was ailing them and the real fear that they had of this government that was palpable. And so I realized that in spite of all that I went through, there are people who were in worse condition and they needed a voice, and so I decided to become the voice of sorry persons that could not or will not speak up for themselves.
Wow. A very accomplished Nevisian son of the soil. And today I just want to say thank you, Dr. Daly, for all you do for the people of Nevis. Thank you for being an outstanding public servant. And I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you. Listeners and viewers will agree with me from what you've just gone through as far as the detail of your career path. So thank you for being an outstanding public servant. Thank you for being a voice and one of the few voices out there. Thank you for being a voice for the voiceless. And we salute you. What you do on a daily and weekly basis, it takes much sacrifice. I mean, it is not easy. And you could have kept quiet and go along and enjoy your pension and your fishing, but you choose to continue the fight for the people of Nevis. And maybe folks out there, they see it, they may not say it, but I'm sure, along with me, many others out there, they appreciate what you do on a daily and weekly basis. So we appreciate you and thank you for that. Now, Dr. Daly, let's get to why you're here. First, I must ask, how was Culturama? It was the big Culturama 50. So what was your take on the past festival on Nevis?
Has it come yet? I'm wondering if it happened already. It was a huge disappointment. I think the government are not being properly prepared to present to Nevis what should have been a monumental event, and they dropped the ball on that. I think the focus was misplaced. They thought that focusing on building VIP booths and painting up buildings to give people an aesthetic view rather than a cultural view was really badly mistimed. The idea was misplaced. The millions spent in trying to cover up the rot that is the Nevis economy by covering it in paint, and patching here and patching there, or building VIP to impress. That is a missed opportunity. Culture, the word culture signifies something. It's a representation of who we are as a people, how we have struggled as a people, where we are as a people. And that cannot be, painted over. And when you looked at the events presented for Culturama, it left a lot to be desired. We all welcome home a lot of expatriates, a lot of persons in diaspora, a lot of family reunions tying themselves around the C50. And outside of those family reunions, they will tell you, persons are honest, they will say they did not feel the event of C50. It should have been more, it should have been better. I don't need to catalog all of the complaints. They're out there on social media. But for me personally, I did not do it. And I'm not speaking any kind of tribal politics. I'm speaking reality. I'm glad that it's not just me who felt this way. a lot of persons on both sides of the aisles had severe criticisms of the government's handling of the C-50, and they were not pleased with the event, how it was orchestrated, how it was managed, the events that were in view. It just did not do it. It did not rise to the occasion, and I think the government is in the realization now, and if there any acceptance that they really screwed up this one.
Now, yes, you mentioned about the investment in the VIP and all of that. But Dr. Daly, me personally, I did not see the need to invest millions in a village that was hardly used for Culturama. The corporate boxes, hardly used. They built them. I'm not even sure what were they thinking. I do understand to rebuild or do some work on this stage area. But gosh, all that on a village that will not be used until next year, when you have civil servants still can't get any increments, they can't get a proper increase. The hospital, there is no end in sight with that, not just because of being poorly constructed and may have to break down, but also because of lack of resources. And the list goes on. But here we are, that we find it best, or we thought it best, to make a structure for Culturama priority. I mean, do you see it that way? I mean, do you have a different view on how, when it comes to that, millions of dollars spent?
It's par for the course. It is what this government does. They're all about the show and not the action. It is par for the course. I am not surprised. The poor planning. And they went ahead and built 5 carpet boxes without first securing the idea or securing commitments from corporate sponsors. So they built these 5 boxes, hoping against hope that they'll be rented out for the season by corporate entities, and they didn't get any. As a matter of fact, persons were saying, why would you have VIP boxes in a village, in the Culturama village, when it's all about, mixing and mingling with the common folk in the shows. And the corporate did not respond because they recognized it was an exercise in futility, in stupidness. And so they refused to invest. The government went ahead anyway and built 5 boxes. They didn't get any rented at all. And even those that were used by now and then somebody would pop in, they were poorly managed. You understand? They were even citing how the buildings were situated. You had no good view of performances on the stage. They were not frontal of the stage or perpendicular to the stage, so you could not see unless you peered out from the carpet boxes, which doesn't make any sense at all. But they did the same thing. They do the same thing at the airport, the Dialysis International Airport. They're thinking that by lengthening the runway, by investing in hangars and all this stuff, that somehow air carriers are going to show up.
And I am going to get to
common sense to say, let us do a resource plan to see, how best, what is advising these developments,
But Dr. Daly, and the thing is, the same people, you talk about corporate boxes, but these corporate boxes, I am thinking of while you were speaking, I'm here thinking about the businesses that could have possibly gone into the village, right? But I can't think of any, and the reason why too, because these are the same businesses you have as sponsors for Culturama anyway. They're not going to invest. Right. They're not going to invest extra into corporate boxes in a village when shows are finished at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever the case may be. But not only that, you do not have enough events to host in that village. So corporate boxes can invest or say, okay, let's put $10,000-$15,000 here, or whatever the case may be. So I do not understand the thought process unless it was just to get some monies in the pockets of supporters of the party. I don't know what it is, but it just wasn't. There wasn't any thought. Impossible.
Well,
Impossible. There was thought process.
It's a combination of all that. I mean, persons were, of course, supporters of the party, of the CCM party, accustomed to be feeding heavily at this time of year. And so the government spared no expense in making sure their pockets were filled. And it goes beyond that, because when persons are talking about we should take politics out of Culturama, and I totally agree. It's a cultural affair, not a political affair. But the government has politicized it. If you look at what happened at the cultural village, the premier bragged that he had 14 contractors. I dare anyone to name a single person who supported the NRP as being a contractor. Beyond that, all the side shows, all the side events that were held outside the village or outside of the Culturama complex were held at known establishments that support the government. Not a single one, not a single event or side event, none of the pre-shows for Calypso or any other show went to any establishment that supported the government. I mean, you could name them off from the business in town, the Queen City, going all the road up to Men's, to Pancos, to 869, to Big Six. All of them are supporters of the sitting government, and not a single person had anything to say about that being unfair. If you look at the Bad Stream reconstruction, the contractors down there again are supporters. So when people are saying yes, we should be taking politics out of the event, the government need to lead by example and do exactly that by sharing up the work between all parties, all persons who support or don't support the government, and making sure that all persons are bought into the idea of Culturama being inclusive. Instead, what we have is strictly tribal politics, where only certain people, only certain contractors. Look what happened to 2020 Vision Radio, the most popular radio station right now in Nevis. A decision was made not to share any advertising dollars for C50 with 2020 Vision, simply because we have 3 shows per week that carry political content. The rest of the shows, the rest of the programming is purely non-political. You see, so for 6 hours a week, we have political shows. 18 hours a week, we have non-political shows on music. And the government suffered not to include 2020 Vision and the public C50 event, where government funds, people's funds are being used. This is the kind of nonsense that we need to bring out to the public, that this government is not concerned about inclusivity. It's only concerned about maintaining their position in government.
Just before Culturama, there was talk, much chatter on MSR Media. MSR Media prides themselves, for those who don't know, as a film company, and the Nevis Island government would have brought them to Nevis. Now, in my mind, thus far, they have provided and I'm respectfully being honest about this. They have provided very low quality, low rated films for the island. A local could have done better if given the opportunity and the support that MSR Media got from the Nevis Island administration. Now, you, Dr. Daly, you have had your eyes on MSR Media for a very long time. And since they landed on Nevis, or even before they got to Nevis, and you got wind of information about MSR Media and the arrangement they have with the Nevis Island government. So let's go back from the start. What do you know about the arrangement the Nevis Island administration had with MSR Media? And where are we now? For I know that MSR Media, through its principal, Philip Martinez, would have filed a lawsuit on a few nationals and entities of St. Kitts and Nevis. So where are we now as it relates to MSR Media?
Well, MSR would have come into Nevis in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And they would have been stuck in Barbados. The government in Barbados refused whatever agreement, or we should say, rejected whatever agreement they had, or potentially had. And so they needed a home, and they needed to find somewhere to go. Fortunately for MSR, one of their principals, which was with them in Barbados, knew of a gentleman here on Nevis, an expat who worked with NEPA, the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency, who had the premier's ear. You understand? And so he was able to make the phone call. The premier joined that phone call, and MSR arrived on Nevis during the height of pandemic. They got here. They promised to develop a film industry, to train musicians in filmmaking, and all sorts of glorious promises. What we didn't know fully at the time was the extent at which the government was subsidizing and had agreed to subsidize MSR. And we learned about it from a source which, number one, told us about the amount that was being paid to MSR to subsidize their housing, and of course the fact that we needed to look closely at the gentleman himself, the principal, Mr. What's his name?
Martinez.
Philip Martinez. And so when I started investigating, I could not believe that what was unfolding on the social media, what was unfolding on the internet regarding his behavior and his problems with the law. I mean, he was charged with fraud. He did get convicted of fraud, and I could not imagine that the government would have done any due diligence and still continue or even agree to have a relationship with a gentleman of his character, given the difficulty we have with all these kind of people coming to the region and flipping off locals. But the premier persisted that he wanted this film industry. And so he decided in an agreement that he will fund MSR. And from his own words, he said that they pay $150,000 per month for a subsidy to MSR.
$150,000 per month?
Per month. That amounted to about $406,000 every month for a time during COVID, when the NIA was pleading with Nevisians to be patient, to tighten their belts, because they had no money to help persons who were displaced, persons who lost their jobs, persons who were struggling with making ends meet because of no money. And so it was a slap in the face to Nevisians that the premier was going hell-bent into supporting and subsidizing a film industry that we got very little out of. There was no marketing information that this venture steered anybody to Nevis. Like you indicated, the films made are really subpar, poorly written, poorly directed, and poorly received. And so I am not certain what utility, what benefit it was accrued to Nevisians regarding the film industry. But the premier persisted because it's the only industry he could boast of that he brought to Nevis. All the other industries that he tried, the dog industry that never got anywhere. Then you had the trucking industry that lost its wheels. Then you had the aggregating industry that couldn't get anywhere. And so he was holding on to this film industry, and so I could understand his being destitute, because he had failed to deliver anything to Nevis, and so he felt this was his shining moment. And so we now have a situation where presently MSR has the government of St. Kitts and Nevis in court. In the first instance, in a judiciary issue case on St. Kitts against the sitting government, and then of course the RICO case in the United States against principals in the former government, Dr. Harris, and of course the present Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Douglas, and a few other persons. But the premier needs to take responsibility for this, because number one, he brought this pariah to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis without doing any due diligence. That's the first case. The second thing is, when all these matters were being discussed in cabinet, when he was part of team unity government, he indicated now he's out of government, that the claim made by MSR that passports were being undersold, he kept quiet. He said he was in the yard. He had no idea. And then he said they were sold not like shortcake, not like black pudding, but shortcake. Now you sat there, you sat in parliament, you sat in cabinet, as a sitting member of a government that were as he puts it, defrauding the people of Nevis by the tune of tens of thousands of dollars per passport, and you said nothing. You had to be fired by the former Prime Minister for you to open your mouth to say something was amiss. Well, where were you when this fraud was happening, this abuse that you're claiming happened? Where were you? You were sitting there in cabinet.
But he was in the yard, he said.
Well, he was in the yard when he should have been in cabinet. And if he was in the yard, how could he characterize the fact that passports were being sold for shortcake if he wasn't aware of the quantum being spent on his passports?
But Dr. Daly, you said that you blamed the Premier because, of course, he brought MSR to the Federation. Yes, the Federation is one, but can he make the argument that he brought MSR Media to Nevis, and the Prime Minister then, which he has accused, the then Prime Minister Harris, that it was Prime Minister Harris who, for a better term, stole MSR Media, pulled away Philip Martinez from Nevis, from under the Premier, and had him on St. Kitts. So can you honestly blame the Premier, though, for what has taken place now with MSR?
There's enough blame to go around, to be honest. The issue is this. Mark Brantley was a member of the THG government when MSR started showing interest in moving shop to St. Kitts. Did you hear at any moment, at any time, the Premier going on social media publicly condemning the move? I don't recall that.
No.
There was some innuendo, there was some backtalk, backroom channels. Some of his underlings were throwing shade. But no. The fact is this: Philip Martinez is an opportunist.
Mm-hmm.
He saw a brighter, sunny day on St. Kitts with CBI, being directly related to St. Kitts, not related, directly ensconced on St. Kitts. He saw that potential, and therefore he decided to move. I didn't hear any big old cry. All I heard was, well, we're going to shoot films on Nevis, and we're going to shoot films on St. Kitts. We should not be disturbed by that. They're going to move headquarters. What we did not know, and since I subsequently found out, that according to MSI himself, Philip Martinez himself, conversations were being had by Brantley and the gentleman from Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? I forget his name now.
Who's Ken?
To keep Martinez in Nevis and St. Kitts by offering him the OTI hotel, which already had ascribed to it a certain amount of shares, or CBI shares. I think it was 300, valued at $200,000 a piece, of $60 million. I saw, when I hear the latest outcry from the Premier that let them take that, they took him from me and now they're reaping the whirlwind. Everything was corrupt, everything was bad. Where was he in all this? He was a sitting member, Mervin, of the TV unity government in cabinet when all this occurred. I didn't hear any big outcry at that point in time. What then was his obligation to the people of Nevis and St. Kitts? What was his obligation? Wasn't it to say, no, this is our bread and butter. We cannot jeopardize our standing in the world. We do not want a situation where our passports are being undersold. This is our patrimony. No, he kept quiet. He said nothing. Only after he was fired by the former government that he began to talk. And I recall that on one of his shows on the Mark, he telegraphed that something big was going to happen regarding the CBI and all those who were defrauding the government. And 2 days later, the letter from MSR dropped like a bomb in St. Kitts and Nevis, where accusations were being flown to the atmosphere that the THG government, Timothy Harris in particular, Les Khan, Galaxy International, or whatever they call themselves, one of the biggest fraudsters in the world. It was not coincidental. I doubt that very much. advanced knowledge, I believe that this was happening. I would even dare to say there might have been some element of collusion between Philip Martinez and the presenter on that show. He knew, and he telegraphed something big was going to happen. All right, and so I see this as by Philip Martinez as just another game that he's playing to defraud the people of Nevis and St. Kitts, to extract from them his blood money, because he screwed up his investors' money when he bought MSR, when he bought OTI. He bought OTI for $12 million. Attached to that was $60 million CBI program. The question that must be asked: how is it you can't sell $60 million worth of shares? And you're going to blame somebody else for it? You see? It doesn't make any sense. But he's being aided and abetted by higher ups here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis against the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Wow. Dr. Daly, speaking of the CBI, the CCM party on the federal side of things rode into the federal government in 2015 on the promises of a fair share for the people of Nevis. And rightfully so, I'd say it is high time that Nevisians deserve what is rightfully ours. So it was a great platform for the party and for Nevis. Now, there was a Charlestown Accord, and yes, Nevisians were hopeful. But during the time in office between 2015 to 2022, Nevis received over, I believe, $600 million. Over $600 million. And from the federal government. This has nothing to do with Nevis's own local island revenue. But yet, the unity government blew up in our faces, because the premier argued that Nevis wasn't getting its fair share, even though over the years he bragged that the prime minister then, Timothy Harris, was the best prime minister, and that the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis, it was the best it has ever been. So my two-part question to you, Dr. Daly, with the federal government's injection into Nevis and the local government's revenues between 2015 to present, 2024, I'd say we have over $1 billion. $1 billion. Because now Prime Minister Drew, he has continued the monthly payments to the Nevis Island coffers. Have you seen $1 billion across Nevis? And if so, where? What's your take on all of that?
But I'm telling you something, your maths is not matching.
Okay, so math it for me.
If you count from 2015 to 2024, what the NIA would have received in CBI remittances, and you combine that with the current revenue that from taxes and stuff, and you count again loans that have accrued by the NIA, you're talking about $2 billion.
Okay.
Spent.
I didn't pass math in school.
And so, with $2 billion spent in an economy from 2015 to now, each of us, Mervin, should have a golden toilet in our houses.
Wow.
Because it is a lot of money. And we are not seeing the effect of that money in the economy. Things are very, very bad. Roads remain unfixed. Hospitals can't complete. Projects are simply not done. I mean, the simplest of things can't get done. So the question then, of course, the most obvious question, what has become of all that money? How has it been spent? We are increasingly putting pressure on our loan portfolio. We're borrowing more. We just borrowed for the year alone over $18 million, $8 million from Social Security, $10 million from Bank of Nevis, to complete projects that should have been funded years ago. And here we are back in 2024 in a depressed economy, and it's struggling. But let us go back to CBI.
But you know what? Sorry. Let us go back to CBI. Remember that point. But you know what? I forgot to add in that, Dr. Daly, as you just mentioned something. The grants that we would have received, Nevis would have received throughout those years, the loans they went for over those years. So it's really, really the amount you're calling.
Yeah, it's big money. For a population of 13,000 people, $2 billion is a mega amount of money. And, the premier has really done a terrible job in managing that money. I mean, that's a massive amount of money. $2 billion for 13,000 people. Anyway, when you go back a little bit to CBI, and the Premier would have recently indicated that on the day after the federal government would have come into existence, that would be August 6th of 2022, he written to the Prime Minister regarding his concerns about the fair share and how best to move forward with that. Because even now, you must recognize that the $6 million per year we get in CBI from the federal government, it is not codified anywhere. Nobody can get it at any time and say, listen, I didn't agree to that. Where's the law that says you are prescribed that? So the Premier has done nothing. And Timothy Harris, the former Prime Minister, said that he did not even make a cabinet submission to address this fair share issue. Dr. Drew has come out and said he has asked the World Bank to do a report.
But the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, did ask the World Bank as well. In all fairness, Timothy Harris,
yes,
he proposed that to the Premier when they were in just before the breakup, and the Premier then declined that. He didn't want that. He wanted his monies right away.
Right, and you see, the problem I'm having with this whole matter of fair share is the piecemeal approach. Fair share is something very critical to the existence of both St. and Nevis. And we are relying heavily on the CBI receipts. It's not in the Constitution for fair share, because it wasn't that instrument of CBI had not been formulated when the Constitution was written. Our Constitution speaks about tax revenue, so that's outside of the ambit. It is strange though that since fair share since CBI came into existence, nobody has seen fit to insist on having that part of the Constitution amended to reflect that Nevis should and must get its fair share of our patrimony. And so I hold all past leaders responsible for not having that legislation enacted to divide up how or to decide how best to share our revenue. We've done it with the VAT, even though NRP, even though CCM went back and reneged on the VAT sharing agreement. That was an agreement that worked for a number of years on NRP, right? But long story short, Dr. Drew has not done any service to Nevis by not dealing with the fair share matter. And what upsets me very much is his insistence, Mervin, of talking about good governance agenda. Good governance extends beyond legislation regarding corruption, anti-corruption. Extends beyond freedom of information, freedom of information.
But in all fairness, wouldn't you say though that Dr. Drew just came to office in 2022 and would have already consulted regarding the World Bank when we only heard about the World Bank under the unity during the breakup period of that coalition? Wouldn't you say at least
where's the urgency in this matter?
Okay.
Where's the urgency in getting this fair share matter sorted? There's none. You have 2 years in office. You have passed a slew of legislation, but nothing to do with fair share, nothing to do with electoral reform, nothing to do with matters that concern us here in Nevis.
But the premier, Mark Brantley, he is also leader of the opposition. So if he wanted these things,
don't insult me with that.
Mm-hmm.
To be a leader of the opposition, you have to express and to show that you are a leader of the opposition. There's a comfort level between the Premier and the Prime Minister, where each has agreed not to attack each other. You as the leader of the opposition are supposed to hold the government accountable. You as leader of the opposition, you are the chair of the Public Accounts Committee. There's a lot of issues to be ventilated at the parliamentary level. The Premier has chosen not to ruffle the feathers, not to blow any smoke in the direction of the Premier, of the Prime Minister. And so there's a comfort level between them that is unhealthy for democracy. You understand? And so while we are getting $5.5 million per month in budgetary support through CBI, how much really should we be getting? Why is that not being addressed as a good governance agenda? How is it that we can speak so eloquently that a child in Butlers is the same, should have the same privileges and rights as a child in Kian, or a child in Gingerland is the same as a child in Sadlers? You can't be speaking one way and acting contrary.
But the Premier did say that someone can be the Prime Minister in Tabernacle, they can be a Prime Minister in Nevis too, but I think he was talking about himself.
Demonstrate to me that you're serious about good governance, not just by passing legislation to do with anti-corruption, freedom of information, and these kind of things that are just ticking boxes on a form to show the outside world that you're indeed, interested in good governance. But good governance starts at home. How you treat your people, making sure that people get a fair share of what's happening in Federation and St. Kitts Nevis. And that I'm not seeing that enough evidence of that. Now we are saying, people say, what happened to PAP and STEP and all the other federal programs? Fine, put them into the matrix. Calculate out how much Nevis is getting via those social safety net programs. Deduct that from whatever CBI and work out the balance and make sure Nevis gets its fair share. The difficulty I find is that St. Kitts has become so dependent on CBI for so much of their budgetary allocations that I believe there's a fear that given that they've extended themselves to almost $1 billion budget per year, by giving Nevis more of what they collect, they might not have enough for themselves. I don't know. But I find it astounding that once out of government, everybody wants to know, well, how much money is in the balance, or how much money is in CBI? The opposition then, which was SKNLP, wanted to know. Timothy Harris kept it a secret. Mark Banty kept it a secret. He said he didn't know. Now that they're in there, they have maintained the same secrecy. Nobody seems to know how much money is in stockpile in CBI. Why is it a secret? Why should this be a secret? It's the people's money. I don't understand it. And my whole thing is, if you are not going to pursue a joint development between St. Kitts and Nevis using CBI receipts, then you are nowhere. St. Kitts will go ahead with the majority of the money, Nevis will fall back with the minority of the money, because we have a leadership that's not insisting to take this to the match. The Constitution provides for adjudication of this matter. The Prime Minister, to his credit, when Brantley said he did not know the Taiwanese were donating money in that amount, $20 million per year, in a grant to St. Kitts and Nevis, the Prime Minister, to his credit, said, listen, we are going to give Nevis 25% of that off the top. So what informed that 25%? How did they arrive at 25%? When you do the calculation as to how much money Nevis is getting now, the most conservative estimate from CBI, it is between 7 and 11%. So how can you run at 25% but settle for 7 to 11% for CBI?
Dr. Daly, on Thursday, the Honorable Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, she made a post on social media, and we're speaking about CBI, fair share, and all of that. And I just want to read it. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I just want to read it just for a minute or two. And Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, who is the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party. Tropical storm Ernesto passed through our country, and it appears that the damage was minimal. However, the seas were rough and the seaports were closed. It is unfortunate that our dialysis patients in Nevis had to be further stressed after Ernesto had passed, because they had to travel the rough seas to get to and from St. Kitts for treatment. Imagine that the Nevis Reformation Party already had dialysis equipment at the Alexandra Hospital in Nevis, but the heartless Premier Brantley refused to install the equipment and allowed the machines to sit and rot while dialysis patients died. In 2018, Brantley received just about 167,000 US dollars in grant funding from the Taiwanese government to purchase dialysis equipment for the Alexandra Hospital. To this day, no dialysis equipment has been purchased, and the money cannot be accounted for. In 2023, Prime Minister Drew received 15 additional dialysis machines on St. Kitts and stated that they have so many dialysis machines in St. Kitts now that they have backup machines for the backup machines. No fair share for machines for Nevis, not even one machine to Nevis. There is a big difference between a sustainable island and a sustainable island state. Why in 2024, when we predict more storms and more rough seas, the CCM-led government cannot see the need to provide dialysis treatment at the Alexandra Hospital? $5 million to provide VIP at the cultural complex, well, the village, but nothing for the dialysis patients? Perhaps we will see dialysis treatment in Nevis when the self-serving Brantley or his ministers need it. Dr. Daly, your thoughts?
Well, the article is poignant and very true. It is inescapable to make the comparison between what was promised and what was spent in dialysis treatment. It is heartbreaking. I've seen it for myself. Persons routinely being stopped at the seaports here on Nevis trying to get the ferries over during bad weather. I've seen it more than once, especially when we had those hurricanes back in 21, 22. Persons were just stuck for a week, and people need dialysis every other day. It's a difficult process. You have to recover. It takes about 4 hours to recover once you're finished your dialysis treatment. It takes a while. And so it is heartbreaking to know that with such a wonderful start, when Hensy Daniel, who was the Minister of Health, would have seen fit under the Joseph Barry government to purchase from Israel 2 top-of-the-class dialysis machines to help Nevisians who are struggling with end-stage renal failure, to make sure that they got as much as the best treatment possible. And those incidences of renal failure are increasing, and they're increasing very dramatically without any commensurate increase in services here on Nevis. I applaud Dr. Drew and his government for ensuring that they have enough capacity on St. Kitts to entertain those persons on Nevis who need dialysis. But it should not be the responsibility of the federal government or Dr. Drew to make sure the health of Nevisians is assured. It is a responsibility of the Premier of Nevis and the leadership of Nevis to look after the health of Nevisians. They're the ones who have the budgetary support. They're the ones who collect our taxes. They're the ones who have the power and authority to build capacity in our island. And they have not done it. They simply passed the baton on to Dr. Drew on St. Kitts, which is unfortunate because you are then competing. Nevisians then have to now compete for a place on St. Kitts with petitions who need those seats on St. Kitts for dialysis. And so the government here on Nevis need to take responsibility for ensuring the health of Nevisians. You know, and we hear so many complaints from our brothers and St. Kitts brothers and sisters and St. Kitts, which is sometimes when things are, when machines are down, they have to wait because the Nevisian patients are given preference. That should never happen. The Premier traveled to Guyana in 2015 or 2014, 2014 I believe, and said he is on a fine mission to the hospital in Guyana having to do dialysis, and that he will send immediately for training 4 nurses for training on dialysis. This is now 2024, 10 years later. We have not advanced a single inch. How can you, in good conscience, take $167,000 US from our friends from Taiwan, ostensibly to invest in dialysis machines, and the money has simply disappeared? You have not given an accounting for it. It's gone. There's no money. And you would have gotten such a head start with those containerized dialysis machines. You've done nothing to assist the people on Nevis who are struggling with renal failure. And it is heartbreaking that persons, even in the medical field, who support this government, I don't know how they sleep at night, knowing that they themselves have been sworn to oath, the Hippocratic oath, to ensure that patients are well cared for, that you expend every possible means at your disposal to ensure the safety and well-being of your patients. And you have doctors and nurses here on Nevis, Mervin, believe it or not, who lift not a brow in defense of these patients. I can't understand it.
Wow.
I'm a layman. I'm not a physician. I have friends who have to be dialyzed. I have friends who have died because of kidney failure. And I can't see how families with members of their families who see the struggle of having to board a ferry to St. Kitts 3 days a week, accept this nonsense from this government. It's beyond me. It's beyond comprehension that this is allowed to happen and allowed to fester for all these years. And this gentleman is given a pass. How can you look your cousin or your brother or your sister or your mother or your father in the eye and say, I agree with what he's doing. I agree he should punish you. I agree he should send to St. Kitts. You have to go to the ferry in the morning to St. Kitts to get diet. I agree with him. I have no relative that is struggling. I have friends who have died. I know people who struggle every day with renal failure. And my heart bleeds for them. And so I can understand Dr. Hodges' outcry. I've never seen her so animated and so upset in a matter like this. The language she used, very muscular language, very passionate language, to describe what should never have happened. This needs an inquest as to why the government allowed an investment of magnitude to go to rot as if it didn't matter. All because of his hatred for NRP. And he felt that if this was to happen, perhaps NRP will get a feather in their cap and persons will say, oh man, this is wonderful. So you are embarking on collective punishment of a population of people because you hate NRP that much? It is unconscionable what's happening. And I appeal to those persons in the diaspora, I appeal to those persons here on Nevis to examine themselves, to ask whether they will accept this from any leadership. So why are they accepting it from this one?
Wow. Dr. Daly, that just this is just a topic that emotions can run high. I understand, believe me. So as we wrap up, an election can be announced any day because, as we know it, it is constitutionally due in 2027. But the Constitution gives the Premier the right to call it at any time. Perhaps he wanted to do that after Culturama, but that did not go too well. Do you think your party, the Nevis Reformation Party, is ready? And what advice do you have for the leader, the Honorable Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, and her team?
All right. Before we get to that, if I may indulge it for a minute, because the Premier has this penchant for coming out and saying things are good. Everybody knows things are good. I don't ask anybody out there whether you're NRP supporter or CCM supporter or SKLP or team, whatever it is. Ask yourself what measure of success can the Premier boast of? I am trained. My mind is trained to look at data, so it's always data-driven decisions that move me, or data-driven claims that impress me. I would like for anybody to have a debate with me, and I put up a challenge to look at all of the indicators that would define a government as being successful. You look at job creation. Where are we with that? You look at tourism expansion, which is our largest driver of the economy. Is that expanding, or is it contracting, or is it staying the same? You look at opportunities for investment for locals and, of course, international investors. Where's that portfolio? Where is that going? And has it grown? Has GDP increased? Are we seeing growth in the financial sector? You understand? So, are we seeing growth in education and healthcare, agriculture, all those things? Bring the numbers, and we have a debate. But for the premier to simply get out on his platform and say things are good, and you have not brought a single meaningful development that hires more than 10 people. You have not brought any of the 30 hotels you promised. The hospital extension is in a mess. Most persons in the know are recommending it be torn down. Don't talk about how the contract was even awarded to the architect. Where is the quantity survey that will inform going forward with that project? Why are we still borrowing $8 million from Bank of Nevis to finish the hospital? We knowing that fully well that can't even go nowhere near to finish the hospital. The failure to deliver water after 10 years, after the first wells are now being dug after drought after drought after drought. I mean, the list continues of a government in free fall, a government that simply has not delivered for Nevis. With $2 billion spent since 2015, we should not be having this conversation, Mervin Hanley. We should not be having a conversation where mothers are saying the prices in the shops they can't afford. Nurses should not be complaining they have not gotten the increment. Teachers should not be complaining there's no chalk in the classroom.
Jeez.
These are the kind of things that we should, as a population, be holding the government to account. Every government that comes into existence, they are paid by the public's purse to lead this country. Not to enrich themselves, to lead the country. But what we're seeing is that they have turned that leadership into their own personal bank accounts. They have enriched themselves rather than enriching the people. Look at all who have big houses, really into politics, have big houses, multi-million-dollar houses, really into politics, have brand new cars, expensive luxury cars, expensive clothing and trips and everything else, as if they're living in a bubble by themselves. And I'm saying to people in Nevis, it's easy to judge and call me, oh, you're just jealous, oh, you're just bad, whatever it is, describe me. I'm heading home. But my children remain. And I want that island is better for them than it was for me. I have no aspirations to garner wealth, to accumulate wealth, to go away with. That is a sign that you're not in this for the people. You're in this for yourself. Look at Joseph Perry lives over there. Same house he lived in since he was first married. Look at Wednesday Daniel lives. Same house. Nothing fantastic. They came out poor from politics and they went in. They gave themselves to the people of Nevis. Sacrificed themselves for the people of Nevis. That is what public service means. And we need to get back to that aspiration that we are bigger than ourselves. This is bigger than us. This is about our country's survival. And when you have persons like we have now in this government who do not aspire to making sure that the little boy in Gingerland and the little boy in Charlestown have every opportunity at their disposal to make them better citizens of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, to make sure that person with dialysis, that person with a heart condition, those clinics, those community centers are maintained. Then where are we? We are then voting on personality, who we like, who got expensive cars. We have reduced ourselves to being Hollywood style advocates that we like him because he sound good. We are the programs for educating our youth. We are in the teens of persons accessing tertiary education. And then we complain about about the regional integration, the regional migration into the federation looking jobs. But we have not done our job to train our people. And who is providing the scholarships? I mean, we are shooting ourselves in the feet every time because we have not recognized and we have not connected the dots that the condition we find ourselves in is directly related to and as a consequence of the poor governance we are getting. We are facts. You have to connect the dots. If I'm not getting health care, who is the Minister of Health? Where is the funding for health? How is it we have not moved on health? When children are coming back here with $80,000, $100,000 worth of debt for university training, burdened for years, how are they to start their lives? With a house when they're paying back the government bank at a rate that they can't even afford? Where's the National Foundation for Education that's supposed to provide for our children education? From a CBI of billions, we are forcing parents to go to the government bank to borrow, putting our people in debt for them children to come back home to work for what? We are missing the boat. We are missing the boat. We are not understanding that this CBI is a blessing to help us move ahead, not to remain as we are, not to keep us poor. And that's exactly what is happening. We are not investing in our people. And how can you move country? How can you move forward as the people if you're not investing in your people? The model from Singapore tells you that if you invest in people, you build your nation. They invested billions into education, tertiary level and university. Skills training. That was a gift from the government to the people, and the government those people now have repaid the government by investing in their own country, to build their own country. And where are we here? We're talking about sovereign wealth fund. We're talking about FOPs. Where are we going? We seem to be lost in the wilderness, not understanding what it takes to develop a country. Sorry for that, Mervin. I just had to get it off my mind. You know.
I understand, and I did not interrupt you because it had to be said, and we just had to listen. And I'm sure the audience right now, they are just taken up in everything that you're saying and allowing it to resonate with them. But as we end this, I mean, this is powerful, Daly, Dr. Daly. But as we end this, back to my last question, what advice do you have for the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, and her team?
First off, I appreciate what Dr. Hodge is doing. I think she's a wonderful person. I know her personally. I think she has the right DNA, not just from her father, of course, but political DNA, to be an astute, deliberate leader that would embrace all of Nevis. Whether you're a citizen or resident, there's a place for you. All right? The people of Nevis must want change, Mervin. The people of Nevis must want change. We could have all the best candidates, could have all the best ideas, and we normally do. But until the people recognize the connectivity between who you elect and the result you get from that election in terms of leadership, you're going to always be second-guessing yourself as to whether you made the right choice or not. I believe NRP is the right choice. I believe the candidates from NRP need to understand that their candidacy, whether you're a caretaker or you're a parliamentarian like Dr. Hodge, you have to go there and work. You have to go and convince the people, even though you shouldn't have to, because the evidence is clear. but it is your obligation to go there and sell yourself. This has become, once you put your heart in the ring, this has become your life. It's bigger than you. You have to commit and sacrifice things that you never thought you would need to sacrifice. Right? And you have to be, so on the move. When I see the 60-year-old plus Kamala Harris in the States,
59. That's my girl.
59.
Let's get it right when it comes to Kamala.
A looking company. Our 60-year-old looking company.
Yes.
Anyway, when you see these gentlemen, and the gentleman himself, you see these guys pounding the concrete, kissing the baby, shaking hands, going to event after event to event. It should give you an indication of the sacrifices that need to be made.
Yes.
By our candidates, here on Nevis. By all candidates throughout the Federation of Sickness and Nevis. Especially if you are trying to convince people that you're the best thing since sliced bread. Alright? There's nothing called tired or I can do it tomorrow. No, the time is now.
Mm-hmm.
The time is now. And so, my message to the caretakers of NRP, people are looking to you as in your government, but they're judging you right now on how you proceed to being in your government. That long road, that long march to being in your government. They're measuring you, they're weighing you, and you dare not disappoint. If you have erred in any fashion to upset or disenfranchise, or I should say not disenfranchise, but, should say hurt anybody's feelings. That will happen. It's a natural part of growing up.
Yes.
Alright? It's all part of it. But recognize also that you have a choice to say, listen, let us sit down and talk about this. All included. The tent is wide, the umbrella is wide. Let us sit and have a conversation. Because the last thing you want as a caretaker or candidate is to start to alienate persons who you would then turn to support you, whether in elective while you are running for office or while you are in office. I think the mistake a lot of persons make when they're elected is that they forget the people who elected them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another story. But getting to the process of being elected is a journey full of tears, pain and heartache and disappointment. But remember, nobody called you. You came on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You volunteered. You stood up and said, I'm here, I'm ready. Send me. And we as a party invested in you and believed in you and believe in you. And therefore you now have to demonstrate that you are indeed fit for leadership by getting out there and convincing the electorate that you're indeed fit for leadership. To us, you are. But we only have a few voters. The majority of the voters are there are waiting for you to prove to them that you're indeed fit for purpose.
Dr. Kelvin Daly. Wow. Thank you so much for joining me here this morning on THG Network. It's a pleasure to have you. It's been a powerful 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 17 seconds as I speak to you.
Wow. I didn't realize the time had gone so far.
Yes. That's when you're having fun, you don't look at the time. There's no time. But so thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well,
I do thank you for taking the time, for showing some interest in the things I have to say. Oftentimes, you're working in isolation, and you rarely ever get the kind of recognition of what you do. But I do thank you for taking the time out this morning to have a brief moment with me.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Daly. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. I am Mervin Hanley. You've just heard from the man himself out of Nevis, Dr. Kelvin Daly. Do join me again on Monday morning, God's willing, at 6 o'clock Atlantic Standard Time, when we'll present to you THG News Today. Have yourselves a blessed weekend.